Okay, in the last demonstration, we got to this place, and I had forgotten to fill out the top part where the H1 and the aside was, so I went ahead and I fixed that. So this is where we had gotten. We've got a page that is taking on the browser styling, and we discussed what that means at the default browser style sheet. Now what we want to do is we want to add some navigation and an image. So let's first off just see how we can add images, and then we will deal with the navigation. Let's say that we want to put up here in the section ID banner area, somewhere up here in that article, let's say that we want to put an image. There's some different ways that you could do this. One is we could put an image that's right next to the H1. We could have it be before the header, but I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and keep it inside the header before the H1. So if you wanted to think about how this might look, we could have something that either has next to "Hi, I'm Lee Cotner," it could come before a little picture, or it could be up above it. And let's just say that we're going to have it up above it. You don't have to put it above the header. And the thing is about an image is that it's in line. Remember we talked a little bit about what block is versus in line. Well, this is a block level element, this header, or excuse me, well, the header is a block level, but so is the H1. An IMG tag or an image tag is in line, which means that it's going to try to sit next to something on the same line. If we put it here though, right before the H1 by default is going to take up its own line. So as of right now, if we stick it right here, they are going to visually appear on two different lines. But also in the style sheet, when we go to create it later in our second assignment, what we can do is we can style it so that it takes up the whole block instead of being just like a normal inline element. So let's go ahead and place that here. But what I am going to do, since now I'm suddenly putting more than one thing in this header, is that I'm going to go ahead and drop this down, and I'm going to also drop down the header as well, the ending header tag, and I'm going to drop down the H1 so that that way they have two separate lines and it's really easy to see them. Okay, first of all, we don't have an image in our folder. All right, so first thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and find our folder. Okay, so I pulled it up right here. It's on the desktop, and I have got mine called A1 HTML. That's my root level directory folder for this assignment. And we have an index file. You have to keep your images with your HTML in some way so that they're always going to be ported around together. So as of right now, we've got a folder and we have this index file, but we want to put an image in the same folder. The thing is that I don't want to just place it right here. I could place it in the root level directory of A1 HTML, but it's a best practice to create a new folder and call it images. And the reason is that even though we're just going to have one picture file right now, it's a really good idea in the future to have it in images, because most likely you're going to have a lot of images and you don't want them all floating around. It's just sort of like a best practice for file management. So I'm going to find a picture that I want to put inside of that images folder. Okay, and I have a little file right here. It's called me.png, and I'm just going to drop it inside of my images folder. And you can see it's going to be a little, like, I don't know, painterly picture. You can do whatever you want. And find a picture of yourself, and it can be any old picture of yourself. Okay, so now we actually have an image to work with. Well, the thing is that, actually, let's go back to that. Okay, so I closed it prematurely. So let's look at this folder structure that we've got here. Okay, we're going to need to refer to this whenever we're making our pathways over here in our HTML code. So to create an image tag, you start off with a tag called IMG, and then you put a space, and then the next thing that you're going to have typically is going to be the attribute for the image source, and the source is src for the source attribute. And then what you're going to do is put the source pathway, and the thing is it's going to be a pathway to a file. So you can't just put the name of the file if it's in a folder. You could put the name of the file if that file was sitting in the same directory as the current file being index.html. But if you look over here at our pathways, index is in a folder with, it's in a folder that has another folder inside of it called images. So to get to the me.png file, we have to sort of go and knock on the door of images and ask to talk to me.png. That's kind of the way that you want to look at it. So I like to think of it as sort of like these things are in houses. So let's say that A1 HTML is sort of like the house that everything is in. And let's say that the main living room or the main area of the house is in that folder, and you walk in the door and index is standing there as a greeter. And then if index wants to find me.png, it sort of has to go into a different room, which is like images. Okay, so it can't just, holler out, hey, me.png, because me.png is in a different room. So it literally would have to walk down the hall, go find the images room, and then find me.png. You'll see that I like silly little metaphors, but I find that it helps people to remember them. So what we're going to do is we're going to knock on the door of images, and then you put a / to show that it's going to go in through the door of that folder, and then you're looking for me.png. Okay, so that's the pathway relative to this index.html file. And that is exactly what this is called. This is called a relative pathway. It means that it is relative to the current file. An absolute file would have something like http:// something.com, blah, 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 right? It means that it's like going outside of the house and into the universe to go find a specific address, sort of like whenever you are, mailing something in a letter and you have to put an absolute address so that the post office can get it to where it's going. Okay, so anyway, we have image and then source equals images / me.png. And then the other thing about image tags is that you are supposed to put another attribute called alt, and what that stands for is alternative text, because there are people who are blind, and whenever a screen reader reads that image out, an image is just a binary file, and so a person who's blind can't actually see that binary file. So what we can do is put alternative text, and the alternative text is supposed to describe the picture in a very short way. So in this case, we could put Lee Kotner photograph, or I could put headshot or something like that. Okay, and then what we can do is we end with a / and then a closing tag. Technically, you don't have to have that /, but it's a good practice to keep it. This is what is referred to, I refer to it as a self-closing tag, but they are also referred to as empty tags or void tags, or there's some other names for them too, but I call them self-closing tags. Okay, so now, the other thing too, really quickly about alt text is you should never ever start it with the word image. Okay, don't put that. Don't put image of or images or whatever. Just leave that word out, because that's actually it's a bad practice. It's bad form, because if you can imagine a screen reader reading to somebody who's blind, constantly saying over and over and over again, image of, because what the screen reader actually does, it says image of already, a lot of them do, and then it reads the descriptor of the image. So you don't want it to say something like image of, okay? And just so you know, a lot of websites for government agencies, and also more and more now for everybody, for businesses and so forth. People want to be as web accessible as possible, and not only that, but it's a mandate for government agencies. So if you're ever going to get a job doing a website for a government agency, you absolutely have to always include alt text. So get in the practice of using that. If we save this and do a quick test, and we come over here and refresh our web page, oh my God, that's a huge picture of me. Okay, that's gigantic. Don't worry about that right now. You could use a smaller picture. We're going to style this later whenever it comes down to our second assignment. So don't worry that this thing is so big right now. Anyway, but we're gonna, in the second assignment, we're gonna figure out how we can make that smaller and how we can max it out. You could also just resize the image in whatever application you want to use. But this is how you create an image tag that is placed inside of the HTML. Okay, in the second assignment, we'll get into how you do images for background images because that's part of CSS. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to make a link. We could put a link down at the bottom. If you go all the way down into the footer, we could put a link down at the bottom that's sort of like a check me out on Facebook, or a link to your web address if you have one, or if you have like a Flickr account or something like that. So let's just make a new paragraph down in the footer, and I'm going to show you how to make an anchor link. It's called an anchor tag, and you start off with A, and I'm going to go ahead and do A and A. Okay, so this is what we've got so far. An A tag really needs to have something else besides A. It really is pretty much useless without attributes and values. So the attribute that we need is href. Okay, that stands for hyperreference. And then we need a value for the hyperreference so we know where it's going to go. And let's just say that right now it's going to be an absolute link. I showed you what a pathway that's relative was whenever we made our image pathway up before. But this one is going to be http:// and you could do Facebook or whatever. I'm going to do my website for me just because it's easy for me to type it. Okay, and so this is my website. I have where it's going to go, which is the value. But now I need something that's going to be clickable on the screen, and it goes in between the opening and closing A tags. So you could say, visit my website or visit my Facebook or whatever. That's a link. So let's just say that really quick, and let's just go over here and hit refresh. And then if we go down to the very bottom, you'll see there's a link for visit my website. If I click on it, well, first of all, if I hover, notice the little status bar down here. If you don't have a status bar that shows up that tells you where you're about to go when you hover over a link, then you can go up into your view options of pretty much any browser and tell it to show the status bar. So if I click on that, it's going to take me to my website or wherever it is that you told it to go. The problem is that it refreshed in the same page. And what you might want to do in a lot of websites is you want to be able to have it open in a new page so that you're not taking traffic away from the existing website that you're creating. So let's go over here and I'll show you how to do that. In HTML5, there is an attribute. We have to go after this value. There's an attribute that is called target equals, and then in HTML5 we can say new, so it's going to open in a new window. Okay, you might sometimes see something called _blank. Okay, that is also acceptable, but HTML5, a better way to do it is to say new. _blank is the old way of doing it with old versions of HTML, including XHTML, but we can say target equals new. Let's save this, refresh the page, and then, oh, by the way, if you don't refresh the page, it's not going to remember your changes. So that's a pretty important thing. I think I've told you that in a really simple demo before, but that's just a reminder. And then now if I click on this, you see it opens in a new tab. So I can just very easily still have my other one open. Okay. And the other thing that might be nice is in this page, if we didn't have to scroll all the way to the top, especially later when we have some styling, it'd be nice if we had a little link that, popped us right up to the top. I'm going to show you in the next demonstration how you can do some navigation internally on this page. So go ahead and move on to the next video.